Hello, welcome to iansstudio, not quite live, the 84th edition, and welcome to the show this evening. Let's just get started and I can explain what's going on with the show tonight. Well, it's a short pre-recorded show because I'm not actually available to do the show at this time. I'm going to be doing image feedback as always. 2 slots tonight. First of all, looking at the images that you sent me by email and then the Facebook ones. My main topic and theme for tonight is all about working the scene and how we can, well, the phrase is to work the scene, to get more than one image out of it, to find the best image for a particular scene, subject or location. So that's the theme, and tying into that is the before and after challenge for tonight, which is going to be all about really different times of day. So it's working the scene, but in a different way to how I'm going to talk about. So the two sort of dovetail together quite nicely. And then, of course, I will reveal at the end my image of the week for this week. So stay tuned to the end, find out whether it's your image. It's sort of still semi-interactive. If all goes to plan, I should be in the chat as you're watching this, and I should be saying hi to you in the chat. So please say hi to me and say hi to each other on there. If you've got questions, please put them in the chat. I'll try and deal with them and answer them in the chat. Any I can't deal with in the chat, I'll hold over to next week's show and I'll answer those properly at that point. But keep your questions coming, because that's what feeds the live stream, keeps me going, gives me topics to talk about. So let's get started with tonight's feedback session, and I'm going to start off with the stuff that has been emailed to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. I say this every week. I just want to encourage people to send your images there because I can get larger images, I can get the shooting data, I can check things like your critical focus, I can find out whether your settings were sensible and give you advice on those. And basically, I can do a better job on images which are sent there. So I give those my priority. So we're going to start with that. So let's head over into Lightroom and have a look at those images. First of all, 2 from regular contributor Gary Platt. His first one, a black and white. So let's have a look at that full screen. I believe this is Buxton area from what he said. Line of trees. Right, initial thoughts on this before I look at any of the settings are nice black and white conversion. I like the fact that all the trees are vertical in the frame, so the verticals have been corrected. I think the square crop works well for it. What I'm finding slightly disconcerting, and I suspect this might be multiple images combined together, is the fact that the horizon feels to be going one way and the trees feel to be going the other way, and it's got this slightly warped feel to it. I'm sure that's what nature was like as you were photographing it, Gary, but it just feels a little bit unsettling. Let's have a look at the settings on here. So it was 100th of a second. It was focal length 38mm on 2470 lens. Right, so yeah, fine. So a wide angle lens on there. Little bit of exposure compensation on it with that, and f10 presumably for the depth of field on there. All that seems to have worked. I just wonder about this, the shape down at the bottom. I don't know you know, I've got a thought. I'm going to try something. And if this doesn't work, I can always edit it out of the live stream because it's pre-recorded. Right. So let's just try transform on here, and I'm going to go guided because I think that should be flat along there, and well, I think the trees should be straight, so that and that should be straight, and just because I don't like the distorted writing, now to me that feels a little more natural, but I know you will probably tell me in the chat, Gary, that it isn't and that I've just removed the slope that was there. But that to me just feels that little bit less less uneasy on the eye. So let's have a look at before and after. No, because of the crop, I can't. That was before, that's after. It's slightly, yeah, we can see the difference on there. Interesting one. As I say, I assume that the landscape was at that angle, but whether correcting it, and which is in effect distorting it, which makes it less distorted. Anyway, you know what I mean on there. So I'll leave that one with you as a thought on there. Right, yes, it was Buxton, because that's the name of the file. Right, moving on, the next one, tree. Right, okay. I would say that the subject for this isn't tree. I would say the subject for this is a path or green road or green lane on there, rather than the tree itself. I think I've seen better images from you than this one, Gary. It's interesting, but it looks slightly dark to me looking at the histogram on there. So I'm just going to try lightening it slightly. I don't want to go too far because that might just blow things out. But I think it can take a little bit more and perhaps just a fraction more in the shadows, maybe. No, maybe not. A little bit more on the texture, just a fraction, just a couple of points, I think, on there. Now, what's this shot lacking? It's lacking something. I think what it's lacking is some form of foreground interest. Now, I think what it needs is probably a person in the scene with it. So what would I do with something like this? If I had a tripod with me, and I don't know whether you had or not, let's have a look at the settings, see whether that gives me any clue. 70mm on there, ISO 250, interesting, 80th, right, I'm thinking you're hand holding looking at those settings on there, but if you had a tripod with you on this, I would be tempted to put the camera on tripod and then actually walk into the scene and be just walking away in the distance on there. A 10-second self timer, a sprint and then a walk might make it work, but then you're going to be bang in the middle on it. It probably just needs just moving off to one side a fraction. So maybe something like that, and figure just off to the center here, off center there. I don't know, it needs something else in that shot with it, just to make it work. I don't think it works by itself. Paul sent me an image, and this is one of those plasma ball things. and we've got a little bit of a reflection in the background there. So let's have a look at the settings. 1/5 of a second at f8. Right, so I'm presuming you were on tripod for this, Paul. The first thing I'd recommend on this is making sure your room lights were out, because that's what's picked up in there, and I think that kind of spoils it a little bit with those reflections on there. Next, I would think about the crop, and I would crop it. I would make sure this was a true square crop. So I'm going to go 1:1 on there and try and get this close to the center as I can. So we've got something like that. Now, again, I think we can play around with some basic settings on here. And I think the ones to go with, texture will help, and clarity will certainly bring in a bit on there, and perhaps a little bit of vibrance with it as well, to give something like that, which I think is a bit more interesting. It's just a shame about these reflections. Can we get rid of them using a brush? I'm not sure this is going to work. Hey, that's not bad. I didn't think that was going to work on there, because I thought because of the angles it wasn't going to match up sensibly. Again, that's not done too bad, and let's see what I can do on that one. Yeah, it's not perfect on there. If I was to go into Photoshop, I could do a much better job on that. But that's what I would make of that, by those little tweaks to it on there. Next, we have Tim. Now, Tim sent me some natural light ones. So these are all in connection with last week's live stream, and these are various portraits that he's done. I know, Tim, you sent me some notes about them. I'm deliberately not looking at the notes, because I want to just take these on first impressions rather than knowing the backstory to them, because your viewers aren't going to know the backstory. When they look at a set of images like this, they're not going to know the backstory. So let's just take the images as we find them, and I'll just do them one at a time. And I'm not going to go into great detail on them. I'll look at the settings, look at the shots. So right, we've got natural light portrait here. It's done on an overcast day, so it's a lovely soft lighting on there. Shot at f2.8. Well, let's just zoom in and see what we've got about critical focus. They're not full res images, Tim, so I can't check your focusing on it on there, which is what I wanted to do, because I can't tell whether this is forward focused. I have a feeling it might be, because this little bit of hair that's forward of the eyes just looks a bit sharper than the eyes on there. And if I've got the full res image, I could check that and tell you on there. Oh well, c'est la vie. Next time you send some images in, send me the full resolution ones, please. Looking at the background, they're not quite vertical on there, so we just need to straighten that up just a fraction on there, and that actually helps a lot with that image. So that the lines are now vertical in the scene. I'd perhaps like to see just a touch more light in the eyes. Now we can do that easily in post-production. So K for the adjustment brush, and I'm just going to reset everything, and then I'm just going to I'll go full screen so you can see this a little bit easier. I'm just going to bring the exposure up probably 1.5 stops, something like, no, let's go to 2 on it, around about 2. But I am going to bring down the flow on this right down to 20. And I'm going to zoom in. Shame I haven't got the full res. And basically at that level, I can now just gradually paint on and bring just a little bit more light into the eyes. And because I'm doing it with a flow 20, it just brings it in much more naturally as I paint it in where I need it, like that. Now, before and after on that effect, before, after. You see how that just brings the light back to the eyes on there, and that really helps. Just that little trick with the adjustment brush to bring the light into the eyes, and it just brings your subject much more alive on there. So moving on to your next image, Tim. Again, another nice shot. I'd probably do the same trick on the eyes with there. Again, very soft light on here. It's a little bit flat. If I was shooting this and I had a lot of chance to plan this shot, I would do a couple of things with it. I'd probably put a speed light in there with a softbox just to give a little bit more light on one side, just so that we've got a little bit more definition on the image. Again, I'd want to try and get a bit more light into the eyes, as I said. The other thing to think about is these plants coming in on the left hand side. They're neither cropped out nor in on the scene. I would give a bit more of them on there. How are we for focus? Again, it's not full res, and we're only up to 1430 on there, which is a shame on that. Settings wise, you're shooting f4, very shallow depth of field at 85mm with an 85mm f. Yeah, that's the reasonable settings on there. Wouldn't complain too much about that. Nice bokeh in the background. If you want that background even more out of focus, I would suggest using a longer lens, shooting from further back. If you think about the exercise I set as the part of the before and after challenge about this, about focal length, how you can really control the out of focus background. So look at longer lenses, particularly for something like this, and you can really get an out of focus background there with it. As I said, it'd be nice to see a little bit more of the plant, or move your subject over, as I was saying last week, off to one side so that that's not just creeping in and distracting. This is an interesting one. Again, yeah, we haven't got full res. A bit more light in the eyes. Now, those catch lights, that looks like you've got two light sources, maybe a window and a reflector, possibly on there. Again, I can't tell about your critical focus. It's looking a bit soft round on the hair, which is in line with the eyes on that. We've got areas of sharpness. I mean, this is looking sharp. So I'm wondering whether your focus isn't spot on with it. Yeah, and at f2.5, Tim, you really need to be spot on with your focusing on there with that. I would probably have not if this is daylight coming in, the light that's filling on this side, I would have brought down a little bit just to give us a bit more shadow and definition on this side. I think it's just a tad too bright, maybe half a stop down. I do like this. I'm assuming it's an out of focus person in the foreground. The only thing I would say is, if you've got an out of focus, if you've got a person here on the left hand side, then her eye contact should be towards them rather than towards the camera with it. So I would have got her to look at the person you've got stood there for that shot. This one, nice relaxed pose on there. Again, I don't know whether this was a deliberate choice to put her on that side, but she is facing, I take the adjustment brush off, she's facing outwards across this way, and therefore the natural position for her would be over on this side, which would work a little bit better because we've only got a little bit of cushion here. If we've got this amount of cushion, I can cope with that, but that's neither here nor there on that. But if we could move her over here, then I think that would work an awful lot better. I might be able to do it in Photoshop. I'm not going to have a go, but could be brought over. I think maybe the highlights need to just come down a touch on it, just about something like that. Let's see, before and after. It's the highlights on the skin tones there. It's not nothing intrinsically wrong about it. This looks sharper than the others. Again, that's full resolution, so I can't check your focus on these, Tim, on there. And I think that's an important thing, to make sure your focus is spot on. I think it is on that one, but I can't tell. Again, looks like it might be okay on here. You've done some skin softening, I can tell, and that looks good on it. We've got window light. Now, this is what I was saying earlier about light from one side. Can you see how this side is in shadow? But there's just enough there's enough light to be able to see all the details, but there's enough shadow to give that definition. Compare that with the earlier image. I think that's one of the stronger images, but I'd probably want to see a little bit more of the shoulder, perhaps, on there, rather than it cropping off. Just a fraction more of the frame over this side I think it needs, because it just feels a little bit cropped off here, and you've got a bit more space over there. So that's a minor one. I think that's a lovely shot. It's one of the best so far on the set. Nice glamour lingerie shot. Again, this shows that use of the light shadow on there. The looking down on it, I'd like watch the hair over the eye here, because it is kind of blocking the light to the eye on there. And I think I can see what you're trying to do, not having the eye contact with the camera. I think this one might be quite nice with that pose, but with the eyes just flicked to camera. I think would work nicely with it, rather than it looks at the moment like she's got her eyes closed, or she's in mid blink on there with the eyes. Again, critical focus, can't tell with it whether that's spot on or not with that. So again, nothing much more to say on that one, but lighting is nice. Just watch where the eyes are on that. Just to give you the weekly plug, so please remember to subscribe, like and share. My thanks to everyone who shares the links to this and tells other people about it. I really appreciate that. If you haven't hit the like button by now, just take a moment to go and do that. And if you're new watching this and you're finding this of value, then please subscribe to the channel, because I do put out other videos, not just the live stream. So please subscribe, and you'll get notified when those go online too. And if you aren't a member of the Facebook group and you aren't a member of my newsletter, the link for both of those is down below this video. So please join and subscribe on there. Right, working the scene, that's our theme for this evening. And what I'm going to talk about is it's basically a case study of working the scene based on a visit to Vigo in Spain in January 2018. So this was on a cruise ship, and what I'm going to talk about is the technique for getting the best out of photographing a location. Now, I'm talking about a location with this. The same sort of thing can apply when you're doing portraits or model shoots, for those of you who do that, but the explanation is going to be all about a location and a particular subject at that location, not a person. Now, Vigo wasn't a scheduled stop on the cruise. We were meant to go to Lisbon, couldn't because of the weather conditions, so I got no advanced preparation about what I wanted to go and photograph there. Not only that, but I spent most of our port of call time in port in an internet cafe trying to fix a problem with my laptop. And effectively, I only had 90 minutes to whiz around the town and grab some images. But even though I was on a very tight time scale, the principle of working the scene was one that really came to its fore on this. And if you understand the principles of it, then it doesn't have to take a long time to actually work the scene and work out how to get the best out of a particular location. So here's the scene I was confronted with. It was a square, and I thought, oh, that's a really interesting lampstand. There's a photo to be had there. So that is what I wanted to photograph. So the first thing, as soon as I saw it, grabbed a quick shot, as you can see there, just showing the location. And I could have stopped with just taking that general shot of the square. It looks nice, it looks interesting. I could have finished there. I didn't. I decided I wanted to work the scene. So this is how I go about it. With any location that you arrive at, the first thing to do is just go on your gut instinct and take the obvious shot first. Now, if it's a famous location like the Colosseum, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids, whatever, that will be the classic view that everyone takes. My advice to you, take it as well. And the reason it's well known is because it's a view that works. And treat it as what I call the banker shot on there. And if it's an unknown location, just go on your gut instinct. Oh, that's a nice scene. Just grab the shot. Just get one or two images without thinking about it. Just do those shots. Don't put much thought into it. Just grab them. These, whichever way you're doing it, whether it's the well-known view or the instinct shot, these are what I call the banker shots. In other words, you've got something in the bank that you can work with, that if everything else fails, you've got those shots for that location. And for me, the banker shot of this location was a coming close and look up. Against the blue sky like that, simple angled shot. That was my basic instinct for how to photograph the lampstand, the lamppost. And it sort of works. It stands out against the blue sky. It's in the bank. I know I've got something, I've captured it. I can spend my rest of my time experimenting and working out how to improve on that. And how do you do that? Well, this is what this session's all about. And the way I would advise you do it is to ask some simple questions about the scene. And these will help you work the scene. So, what are these questions? Well, first of all, I need to just say that I didn't necessarily take the shots in the order that I'm presenting them to you in this talk. Largely because I've rearranged it to make it a little bit more sensible, a bit more logical to present as a presentation. When you do this working the scene, after a while it becomes an instinct, and you do all these things not quite simultaneously, but you're going, all right, I'll do that, I'll try that, rather than the process I'm going to talk through, which is in a much more logical order. And if you're starting out doing it, follow the process, and you'll find after time goes on, you'll start to click into the groove and go, oh right, I know to go to exactly that point on there. And realistically, the order that you create the images doesn't actually matter. So the first thing to think about is your background. And the obvious shot, the blue background, gives it contrast, but it doesn't give any context to that location, that square. So my first thought would be, well, how can I show this wonderful lamppost in the context of where it is? So what I did is I started walking around it, looking for an angle which would have the buildings behind it. And this is the shot I got. I've got the lampstand up, nice clean view, again, it stands out, put it on the third line, I've got the buildings and the architecture in the background, and that all works. Then the next question to think about is, well, do I need people in this shot? And if I do, why? Well, I might want people in there to give a sense of scale, because that previous shot doesn't really tell you how tall the lampstand is. It could be huge, it could be quite small. But the main reason I wanted the person in that shot, if I was going with that background, was that it feels very empty and impersonal, and putting someone there gives life to the location. So I waited. I actually waited for a little while, waited for a couple of minutes, to the point where I could get just one person, because I felt having a big crowd there might detract from the lampstand. And I just wanted one person walking past, and eventually that's what I got. And I waited until they were in the archway of the white window, so they'd stand out. They weren't going to be lost in the background of the green doors or any of the darker sections on here. They were framed within the context of the white doorway there. And also, because I've been putting the lampstand on the 1/3 line, this gave a balance to the shot, because they're on the opposite side of the image on there. It gives a balance to the composition. So, next question to ask, what happens if I use a different lens? We've looked previously on the live stream about how wide angles can create a distortion or enable us to capture more of the surroundings which are about us to do that. So what would that do with this lampstand if I put the wide angle lens on? What about using a telephoto lens and maybe just concentrating on some of the details in the scene? I didn't do it actually with the lampstand, but I could have just focused in on individual details that were there. Maybe just one of the lamps, maybe just one bit of the carving on there. I could have done that, but I didn't actually. So the wide angle, what would happen? Well, in my case, I'd been working with what I call my workhorse lens, the 24-105, it's an f4, and I swapped it for my extreme wide angle, 12 to 24 millimeter. This is a lovely lens for distortion, and this is the sort of effect I got, which gives that feel of context. I like actually the way the building's leaning in. It's sort of feeling that although we can see the space, it's got that constriction to it. I've got the people in there for scale as well on there. And that kind of works on there. So the next question to start thinking about is, well, how will this work if I shoot from low down? Or high up? Couldn't do high up for this one, so let's concentrate on the low down. And again, that can give a sort of an interesting effect with the shot. So think about where you're shooting from. Can changing your height affect it? Now, we did an exercise on this with the before and after challenge, and I did it with a person. What happens if I shoot from down below, from above, at eye level, and how that affects the image that we create. Same thing can apply with a lamp stand. So I got down below with my wide angle lens, and this is what I came up with. And I quite liked the fact that we've got the lights radiating out, and we've got the buildings leaning in on three sides, acting as this frame on the image. We've got the strong diagonal coming in, and the whole thing starts to work. And this is this one I really like how it all sort of comes together. So we've got the various things. The only thing I haven't got is people, but it doesn't feel as though it needs people from this angle. Now, with the wide angle lens, okay, I got down low, but what happens if I come in really, really close with that wide angle lens? Can I get some really interesting distortion in there? Well, yes, I can. And I've got this sort of shot. And I like the fact that with the main part of the thing, we've got the details showing on the base of the lamp stand. We've still got the buildings in the background, we've got the radiating light. But what I think it lacks is that three-sided framing that we got on the previous shot. So I've experimented with it. I don't think it's quite as strong as the previous image. I think we've lost that framing on there. So that question of coming in really close and getting the distortion. And then the next one is consider the orientation. Just about all the shots so far have been horizontal. What happens if I change the camera to a vertical format? What happens there? Well, with a vertical format, I can still get the buildings top and bottom. I can get more or less this diagonal coming in. I don't think it's quite as strong as 2 shots ago, but it's a different perspective on it. And I do like the fact that the buildings are in at the top of the frame on there. I think that does work quite well with it. So we've got other questions. I haven't got images to really illustrate this, but what about shooting from a different direction? So always remember, walk around your subject, a full 360 degrees. Try and think about what backgrounds are available, what directions you can shoot. If you can walk around 360 degrees, you might not be able to. You might fall off a cliff if you did that, but do consider that where you can. And what about if you could come back at a different time of day? That can make a huge difference to your image, as I'm going to show you a little bit later in this almost live stream. And think about your processing at the time of your shots. What would happen if I did this as an HDR image? What would happen if I made this black and white? And do I need to shoot in a particular way to achieve that? So think about those sort of questions. And if you make a note of all those questions that I've said to ask, maybe just on a little bit of paper and put it in your camera bag, then when you are working a scene, you can just pull that out and ask those questions of yourself, ask them of the scene, and think, right, okay, this can give me different ways of tackling my subject. Right, this live stream is as ever sponsored by you, because I have a Buy Me a Cuppa link that's down below, it's on the screen as well. and buymeatea.com. It's run by BuyMeACoffee, reputable site, / Ian Butty. If you find these live streams helpful and you tune in, week out, please consider buying me a cuppa through that link to keep the shows on air. There is a cost in doing these, both in time and resources on that. So if you're finding benefit from it and you want to support keeping me on air, then consider buying me a cuppa through that link. And this week's cuppa was brought to me or paid for by Tony Warren. So don't know whether you're watching tonight, Tony, but if you are, cheers. Thanks very much. Lovely cuppa. Right, the before and after challenge. Where are we at with it? And this week, the final exercise is all about time of day. So let me play in the video and you can see how we do that. How does time of day affect the photographs that we create? Join me at an old railway bridge on the River Mersey and let's find out how. Good morning, welcome to IAnsstudio. I'm Ian Butterfield. I'm in Sidings Orchard in Heaton Mersey, just off the Transpennine Trail. I've come down here because I want to do some photography today which shows the difference between different times of day for doing photography. Now, I'm not doing the photography here. I'm going to be doing it down by the Mersey, by an old railway bridge. Now, it's possibly hard to believe that this area where I'm currently sitting, when I was a child in the late 60s, early 70s, this was railway sidings, and there was nothing but trains going through here and where they were parked up. But over the years, it's been very dramatically changed. It's been made into this lovely park and part of the Transpennine Trail. Now, as what remains of it, you might not be able to see the railway here or imagine where it was, but further down on the banks of the River Mersey is an old railway bridge, or the embutment of it, the remains of it, and that's where I'm going to photograph. I'm heading down there to create images at different times of day. So I'm here this morning about 7:15. I'll come back around midday, late afternoon, and possibly evening. So it may be 3 times, it may be 4 times a day that I'm here. So come and join me as I head off to the railway bridge and create the first of my photos for the day. See you down there. I've come down to the River Mersey on the Transpennine Trail. It's actually not too far a walk from home. I've chosen this location because I can come back to it at different times of day. And what you can see over there is the old railway bridge. Across here the bridge ran, and the area I spoke about earlier, Sidings Orchard, that was the sidings, and this was one of the railway lines that led into there. Anyway, that's all changed since the 1960s and 70s. I'm here to photograph what remains, and what I want to point out here is the light that we've got. The light's coming, well, it's in my face, so it's from behind the camera over that way, and it's striking the bridge. And have a look at the shadows. You can see the direction the light's coming from. The time is, well, it's about 7 in the morning. I'd like to have been here just a fraction earlier, but I'm not a morning person, so this is going to have to do. I'm just going to take a few shots of the bridge there, just to record what the light's like and what it looks like at this time of day. I'm shooting at ISO 100, 125th of a second, and f8, believe it or not, my standard studio settings. that will change as I photograph this throughout the day, but let's see how the change of light will affect this. And I'm going to come back now probably around about midday, at which point the sun will be somewhere up there, and that will affect and give us a different look on the railway bridge. So catch you later. So it's now 12:30 and I've come back, and a couple of things to just notice about the light at this point. The sun is way up there, so it's very high in the sky. It's not quite the maximum height it will get, but not far off at 12:30. It's a very harsh light, and if we look at the bridge over there, it's nowhere near as interesting as it was this morning. Let me just take a shot. I'll just want to point something out from that as well. So try and frame it up very similar to how I had this morning, which will be about there. And what you'll notice about that shot is that the bridge is very much in shadow. Yes, there's sunlight on it, but it's quite dark. Now, why is that? Well, that's because the sky is much brighter, and that's affecting my exposure on this. And actually, I've had to dial in an extra stop and a third of negative exposure compensation. This morning I had 2/3 exposure compensation negative on there to create the shot that you saw, but now I've got to go down further. Otherwise, if I take that off, let me show you what happens to the sky. Can you see on that image how all the sky is blown out on there? So I've had to use exposure compensation simply because of the time of day that I'm shooting. So that's a sort of midday heat and how that affects our images. And it looks like I'm joined by a friend for this video. So that's it for the 12:30 bulletin. I'll be back here later today to photograph it again under yet more changes to the light conditions. So late afternoon, I'll see you then. I'm back here to do my third visit. It's now about 5:30, so as you can probably see, the sun's now right behind me. I'm possibly in silhouette on the video. The bridge is very much in silhouette as far as the camera is concerned. So if I now make an image of that, in order to prevent the sky from blowing out, I've got to be about 2 1/3 stops underexposed on there. And if I take the shot like that, you can see straight out of camera that isn't really usable on it, so it needs post-production work on there. Now, this is the image after post-production, so you can see there's a lot that can be done with it, but it's extra work, whereas the images I was taking earlier in the day, particularly in the morning, didn't require that extra work taking place on it, so that's a better time. Now, why is it so dark? Well, because we're shooting into the sun and I want to preserve the detail in the sky. And the way I've done that is I've been using the histogram and the blinkies, the overexposure warning, to tell me when the sky is overexposed. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a series of shots at reducing the exposure compensation. So why bother with that? Well, it should be possible to do an HDR image combining the 0, +1 and -2 images, throwing that through Lightroom's HDR filter combination, and that hopefully will give you this image. So you can see, even in a situation like this where the light's against us, there are still possibilities of what we can achieve. I'll be back a little bit later when the sun has gone a bit further round. I'll see you at that point. So my final visit of the day to this location, and again the light has changed, not how I was expecting. I was really hoping that we might get a sunset, or at least some of the orange light flooding into that patch over there. As it's turned out, it's clouded over and it looks like it might be starting to rain even. So how am I going to photograph it? Well, same as before, I'm going to try and preserve the highlights. I'm going to make sure that the sky doesn't blow out, which will mean that the body of the image is underexposed, so we end up with something that looks like this. Now that's 3 stops underexposed to be able to preserve the sky, which means again in post-production I'm going to have to lighten everything up, and by the magic of editing, that's what the final image looks like. So you can see how underexposing it makes it work. Okay, so lessons from today as the rain starts to come down. The lessons are that the light will change from location over the period of a day. The best shot I got was the early morning one. Does that mean that's the best time for all locations? No, of course it doesn't. What it means is that here, when the sun is in that direction, it lights my subject. Now, if my subject was over that way, then later in the day would be better, because that's where the light would be hitting it. So it's a matter of learning about your subject and sometimes going back multiple times. Now, I've done it all on one day, but sometimes you might do it over multiple days. Go back to a location you've shot at previously, different lighting conditions, different time of day, different weather conditions, you'll get different shots. It's worth doing it. So what do you need? What's the lessons from this exercise, and what do you have to do? Well, the exercise is simply choose a location. You might find it easier if it's somewhere near a home that you can go to. You can photograph, and you can visit multiple times across a day and track how the light changes there. And it's really interesting to see how your shots change by different times on that. Again, process them, stick them on the Facebook group as usual. Link to that is down below. This rain really is coming down heavy now. So thank you for watching. This is the final exercise in the before and after challenge. There's one final thing to do, and that is your after images. So look out for that video, and I'm going to go before I get completely drenched. Right, so let's carry on with the show. Feedback just to finish off with. We've got your images in Lightroom that I've pulled down from the Facebook group. So let's go and have a look at those in Lightroom. So here we are. We've got a number of shots. We've got 10 of them for me to quickly go through. Now, of course, I haven't got the shooting data and I can't check critical focus, but I can give you a few pointers about exposure and composition on these. So yeah, start off with shots from Paul Geddes. Now this is Gullfoss waterfall in Iceland, and this ties in with our theme because Paul has photographed it on three different seasons in Iceland. And the first thing to say about this, now I think Paul, you were just pulling these up and sharing them to show the different seasons on there, but just a hint for you, it might be worth just doing a little bit of edit to these. First of all, let's get the colour of the snow right on there, and then let's bring the exposure up and bring those highlights down on the sky just a little bit. That might be a little bit high on there, and I might with this just try a little bit of dehaze to bring a bit of the blue of the sky back in there. So you can see the image now looks like that. I think that one works a little bit better for you. So from there to there, just those minor tweaks to that one, Paul. Again, same, incredibly close, same location, different time of year. This one definitely needs to dehaze. You can see how hazy it is. So let's just dehaze that. It's a little bit overexposed on the sky there. I think this is a mobile phone shot. Tip for you, Paul, look for a mobile phone app which allows you to dial in your exposure compensation and then do this sort of correction in something like Snapseed afterwards. So with those shadows, I can bring them back up, bring the exposure up, and again, we've got something like that. And possibly a little bit of vibrance in there. There's a shame about that loss of detail in the sky up there, but before and after, we've certainly brought out a bit more of the information. Might be a little bit too vibrant on that one. Pull back the dehaze a little bit on there. So next one. And then the third of this sequence from Paul shows, again, Gullfoss, same waterfall, this time in the depths of winter. Again, this is underexposed because it's all the white snow has completely confused the camera. So normally 1.5 to 2 stops extra exposure compensation. So let's just dial that up, 1.5. And that's not bad on there, maybe just a fraction more on that. Use this to get the colours right. Might be a little bit too warm, that. I'll just try that again. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think we need to just pull that down very slightly. Something along there. And that's looking quite stunning on there. Shame about the rope on there. Let's just deal with that. Oh, nearly got it. Can I just bring that down? Yeah, that's got it. Just something like that. And I might just bring the contrast up a bit on it, and maybe a hint of the. It's a shame we're losing a little bit of definition there. Can we get that back with a tone curve? And it's just a fraction on there, something like that. Ooh. Yeah, I would go with that. So before and after. So that sort of brought that one back to life for you, Paul. Right, John, right. Thank you for joining the group. It's great to have you on board. Right, first thing I'll say, I know why you submit very low resolution images, but in terms of providing feedback, it's easier if I've got larger images. If you don't want to put larger images online, I'd encourage you to email the larger versions through to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk, and then I can give you better feedback on these. Because as it stands now, I can't tell whether this is in focus or not. It looks very soft on here. A couple of things to say. I love the colour on here, the purple effect on that. I think it actually works well with the false colour. I'd like to see just a fraction more of this foreground, and the easiest way to do that is not to tilt the camera down further, but to crouch down so that you keep the camera at the same angle, no further tilting. But if you were to crouch down, kneel down, you'd be able to get a little bit more of that, so that that foreground would appear to come up to about here in the frame, and I think that would work better with that shot on there. That's the best I can say on there. Maybe no, I think the exposure's fine on that. Moving on, I like the panorama on here. Now I can see you've done some post-production work on this because of the sky on there. Again, it's very low resolution, so I can't check the finer details on it. I do rather like this actually as a nice scene. with this sort of thing, I would like to see a little bit more foreground in there, and perhaps the tarn, the lake, being more off to one side with the panorama, because I think you could afford to lose maybe a little bit on that side there, or you could lose a bit over here like that, and I think that works quite well as well on there, just by moving it off to one side with it on there. But nice shot, nice post-production on there, bringing out the detail in the sky on it, so well done. John Barton, another one of your drone shots. It just feels a little bit artificial, this one, to me. I don't know whether I've just seen too many images processed this way with it. It just feels a little bit over-processed. And yet this section is dark. We've got perhaps a little bit bright over here, and this section's dark. Now, I know it's a square panorama done with the drone. I don't like the fact that the main subject is bullseyed in the middle with it. I would like to have seen, and I don't know that I can even achieve this, if we've got something I think that's a bit stronger like that, where that's off on the 1/3 line. But yeah, not very helpful, I'm afraid, this time with that. Sorry. Moving on. John, another one. Right. I like the mistiness of this. Again, I can't check your focus on here. I like the atmosphere that we've got in there. I'd be tempted to just bring the texture up a little bit. And now the dehaze will have a dramatic effect on it because it'll cut through the haze. But I don't know that we want to. In fact, I might even go the opposite way on that and add a bit of haze, add to the haze like that. And I think that works quite well. As I said earlier in the presentation when I was talking with about Gary's images, I'd like to see some foreground interest. So if you had your camera on tripod, you could use self-timer, you could put yourself into the scene walking into the distance on there, and that it just adds that little bit of extra interest into the shot. But nice image on there. Right, Ruskin, I do love your images, but I'd love it if you'd send me them via the email address. I say this every time because I just want to give you some real quality feedback, which I can't do from the Facebook images because I haven't got setting information on them and the full details. Oh, I do love this chap on there. I think it may be just slightly dark, but let's just bring the exposure up slightly to something like that, and I think that works really well. I love the out of focus background. It all works nicely. Just please, as well as posting them in the group, please email them to me as well, the large size ones, and I can give you some real proper feedback. I'd love to do that. Jenny, welcome to the Facebook group. Welcome to the live stream. I hope you're seeing this. We're back to Gullfoss Fall. Again, different time of year again. This is summer. We've got a lovely rainbow. And looking in, now, I can see here, I haven't got the settings, but nice and sharp on the foreground. I don't know where you were focusing. People don't look out of focus in the background. I was hoping your actual focus point on this ought to be the people, by the way, for that scene. I think that works nicely. I love the colours on there. I love the detail in it. I think that's worked really well. And to be honest, not a lot I'd change on that. So well done, Jenny. Similarly with this one, love the rainbow in the mist from the waterfall, the people coming in, nice and sharp on there. I think this might be a phone shot. I don't know. It's just something about it. Very difficult to tell on there. I'd love to have a bit more information on it, but it's a lovely shot. Not a lot I'd want to change on it on there. Love the rainbow. I think the wider shot, the earlier one, works fractionally better than this. But that's, if I had to choose between the two, I think I'd go for the wider shot on there. And so that's it on the images in Lightroom. So heading back over to PowerPoint, it means I've got one last thing to do before I finish, and that's the member photo of the week. And the member photo of the week this week is, drum roll, I still can't do the drum roll. It is, I've actually chosen this one by John Campbell. I think it works nicely, especially if we crop to move the tarn away from bullseyeing it in the middle. And once we do that, I think it will give us a nice banner for the group for the week, looking something like that. So thank you, John, for that. I'll change the image shortly, or as soon as I can after this has gone out. Who's it going to be next week? Well, submit your images to Facebook. I'll pick one of them next week, and maybe it will be your image that's the image of the week. So next Sunday I will be live again at 7:30. So do join me back then. And my theme, I'm hoping whilst I'm away, while I'm not available this Sunday, the reason I'm not available is I've got a trip, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but next Sunday I'll go through whatever images I come back with from that trip, give you some insights and my thought processes on the photography I've been doing, instead of being here live with you today. So that's what it's all about. So if you've got images you want feedback on, email them to me or post them in the Facebook group, and I'll pick up on those next week. If you want a theme for the week, about summer and travel on there. And so until next time, thanks for watching, and as ever, keep making great photos. Bye for now.